If you've ever played or watched sports, I bet you've heard the best defense is a good offense. Or was it the best offense is a good Either way, both scenarios incur that being prepared, being well equipped with a strategy on one end will help alleviate the burden on the other. And when it comes down to healing your pretty cool meat suit, this concept couldn't be any closer to the truth. So put down grandma's magic chicken noodle soup and let's see what we could do without it. Yo, yo, yo! What is up? Welcome back to another week of How to Health. My name is Kevin. I run liftandbalance.com, where we take aim at all things health and do it in an odd, weird, interesting, and highly sarcastic manner. Today, we are once again going to venture into the world of being preventive and explore how we may be able to start healing before anything goes wrong.
What did you say?
Making the healing process not only more efficient and less burdensome, but potentially preventing or drastically mitigating the impact of an injury. Now, I want to say up front, there are a lot of variables at play when it comes to the complex process of healing our body. And everyone's situation is different. So for the context of today's conversation, we're going to talk about acute injuries and specifically how the practice of strategic intermittent fasting may impact everything from prevention to recovery. So to start, we will talk about some of the key components to healing, recent data highlighting how strategic fasting and refeeding play a role, and finally, some recovery and prevention strategies to noodle on. Because let's be honest, you deserve to be moving and grooving more days than not. So let's go on the offensive or defensive. You know what? How about preventive? And don't worry, we'll continue to make up words as we go. Because you'll never know when you'll be riding bikes, joking with your friends, and all of a sudden slam into the back of a parked van.
In the face!
I mean, totally hypothetical scenario, but you never know. First, what exactly is healing? Wound healing happens to be achieved through 4 precisely and highly programmed phases: hemostasis, inflammation, proliferation, and remodeling. The hemostasis phase occurs as the injury is happening and is the first response from the body. This stage is all about stopping the flow of fluids, like blood, from getting out of your body. So you won't be surprised to hear that it consists of things like clotting, which is a good first step. Hats off to evolution. Next, we have the inflammatory phase, where the cleaning and healing of the area begins. This is where white blood cells enter the area and begin cleaning out the wound, moving any waste and pathogens away from the site and out of the body, proving once again that our body is pretty smart. Next, we have the proliferation phase. This occurs when the wound is stable and the new focus is on closing the wound, creating new tissue, and repairing any damaged blood vessels in the area. And finally, we have the remodeling phase, which occurs when the wound is mostly healed. This phase is all about creating strong skin to replace the temporary tissue in the area. And bam! Just like that, we're done. And you've probably seen it firsthand hundreds of times. Hopefully not hundreds, maybe in the tens. But nonetheless, it is truly quite amazing when you think about it. Now, that being said, there are plenty of potential pitfalls that can get in the way or impair this very elaborate process. A few being oxidation status, infection, pre-existing conditions like diabetes and obesity, stress, medications, alcohol, smoking, and quality of nutrition. And I'm sure you're putting 2 and 2 together that a lot of these are purely lifestyle plays. For example, research has shown that a variety of different disease conditions, such as diabetes, negatively affect wound repair processes. Another contributor often is insufficient blood supply due to impaired angiogenesis or creation of new blood vessels. Why, you ask? Because new vessels form from pre-existing endothelial cells, transport oxygen and nutrients to the wound site, enabling new cells to grow, proliferate, migrate, and generate new epidermis or synthesized collagen, which ultimately results in the healing of the wound. Makes sense, right? So, knowing what we know now, we must ask, would a strategic fasting protocol be helpful if you were, I don't know, tackle someone in flag football, chip your tooth, and have it slit part of your tongue in half? So, sorry, getting flashbacks again. What we know about fasting and healing. First, let's delineate. I think that's the right word. If you've been here for a while, you know we talk about multiple forms of fasting as a therapeutic and longevity boosting intervention, with now 50 plus deep dives breaking down all of these topics on the Fasting 101 playlist here. And this is because a lot of these strategic protocols have been tightly associated with improvements in cellular and metabolic biomarkers, such as glucose tolerance, insulin resistance, inflammation levels, cholesterol, triglycerides, visceral fat, cellular recycling, aka autophagy, DNA repair, stem cell activation, blood pressure, overall organ function, sleep, and many other signatures of good health and well-being. But as it pertains specifically to the healing process, its modulation and preparatory impact on the functions of the response and regeneration phases may stick out the most. As we discussed in this video here, when it comes to maintaining the health of one of the most injury-prone areas of the body, the skin, fasting and calorie restriction have shown to expand dermal blood vessels and increase vascular endothelial growth factors, which, if you ask me, are definitely good to have in your back biological pocket. And when you combine this with its ability to activate longevity pathways such as AMPK, and rev up the prevalence of processes such as autophagy, or the cleanup of cellular debris preventing unnecessary damage within the membrane, DNA repair via the activation of sirtuins, which we talk about here, and stem cell reawakening, specifically during the refeeding, which we'll talk about in just a little bit, the stage is set for what seems to be an above average response to any accident we happen to fall into next. So let's see what some of the most recent data shows, highlighting how a fasting protocol may help in response to, I don't know, jumping off a swing, landing weird, and having one of your buck teeth go right down into your knee. Okay, fine. I may be reliving just some of my past traumatic injuries, but please, let's not get sidetracked by my comical injury-prone past, okay? To the data. The data on fasting and healing. Let's start by looking at a few recent studies. One, which assessed the effects of fasting on diabetic and burn wound healing, split mice into a diabetic excisional wound group and a normal group that underwent a normal burn injury. Then they explored the impact of two 24-hour fasts on healing when deployed the week leading up to the wound or the week following the wound in both groups. And of course compared them to a control group that went through no fasting protocol. So what'd they find? First, they observed that both fasting groups healed significantly faster than the control groups. But the fasting before wounding seemed to be more beneficial to wound healing than the fasting after wounding. Interesting. But why was this? Well, researchers believe that this comes down to the refeeding effect, something we've discussed in detail in this video here. Essentially, fasting alone does not lead to cellular proliferation and regeneration. Instead, it primes the body by cleanup and recycling. However, it is upon the refeeding where all the proliferation and regeneration takes effect, which, when you think about it, makes sense. In this study, researchers concluded that fasting after the injury did not expedite the closure of these wounds during the early phases of healing. But several days of refeeding induced a much higher extent of wound healing in these mice compared to the controls. This reinforces previous data supporting that upon refeeding after fasting, coordinated processes occur which are able to induce higher levels of cellular proliferation and regeneration, and suggesting that an overall proactive fasting protocol may be beneficial. Pretty cool, right? But what other data do we have? Well, a different mouse model found that short-term fasting for 4 consecutive days repeated every 2 weeks for 2 months was associated with an increase in wound healing compared to the controls. According to the authors, the fasting enhanced wound healing through the increase in macrophage activity, or by enhancing the inflammatory second phase of wound healing. And additional data, hot off the presses, discovered for the first time that autophagy, or our cellular recycling program, may have a critical role in the wound healing process as well, finding that following an injury, autophagy is increased in the cells surrounding the wound in our oddly biologically similar fruit flies. This leads to a selective breakdown of membranes that connect the cells and the formation of new syncytium, which help with the healing. And although it was not mentioned in the study, we know that autophagy is upregulated during fasting. However, we also know that too much can be counterproductive,
Of course.
especially during wound healing. So we definitely need more data on this specific interaction. But nonetheless, this is all interesting. And guess what? Fasting has also shown to modulate other key aspects of healing, like blood flow, with recent animal research showing that mice fasted 48 hours during a 4-day observation period following a stroke, displayed greater angiogenesis in their damaged brain, helping alleviate cerebral injury. And although we always need more data, especially in humans, it's beginning to make sense why I haven't had any major injuries since starting fasting about 7 years ago. I better just in case. Jokes aside, this may be another reason why strategic fasting, in combination with healthy eating, is cool for biological school. However, it is most certainly not a silver bullet. And there are a lot of factors that one must consider next time they're, paddling to catch a wave and then realizing they drastically misjudge the wave, and then all of a sudden the wave crashes on them, sending them tumbling under the water, and then all of a sudden they feel this big slice on their back and realize that their surfboard sliced through their wetsuit and gave them a nice memory that they can talk about on YouTube during a wound healing video. Okay, that was the last one, I promise. So how can we recover better? I hope if this video drove one message home, it was not to live your life in a bubble, but instead to get preventive and be proactive, to realize that the best healing starts before the injury occurs. And we actually talk about a lot of these key components of prevention in this How Not to Get Sick guide here. So many things play a role in preventative health. Things like what and when you're eating, the exercise you're doing or not doing, the nature you're experiencing, the indoor environment you put yourself in, the products you use, the water you drink, and the GOAT of all things health and longevity that has its very own playlist on this channel, the sleep you get. All of this is critical, affecting things such as your cellular and metabolic efficiency, bone density, muscle mass, blood flow, immune function, detoxification pathways, and thus your recovery. And I know we spoke a lot about fasting, but the facts of the matter are, you kind of have to have a strategy and be thinking about a lot of these other things first to truly reap all the benefits that a strategic fasting protocol may bring forth in this regard. So think about and consider adding the following to your time-restricted feeding or intermittent fasting protocol. First, real nutrient-dense foods, particularly ones that include high-quality protein, as well as vitamins, minerals, antioxidants, and phytonutrients from your fruits and veggies, grass-fed meat, wild fish, and a vast array of legumes, fruits, and veggies are all good choices here. Remember, the magic is in the refeed, and it's important to consider getting an adequate amount of protein on this refeed to stimulate growth pathways, as we talk about here. Next, you need to remember that sleep is king, or queen. It is the prime time for recovery and rejuvenation, and subpar sleep will lead to subpar healing, no matter how good you are in other areas. Then, it's always good to remember that movement is medicine. As we discussed here, exercise, among other things, is one of the best ways to keep those blood vessels and capillaries efficient and active. So deploying strategic movement a few times a week in your protocol is good for biological business. And with all things good, it's important to avoid the potential biological blockades to healing. Things such as alcohol, smoking, a daily environment full of harsh chemicals and pollutants, and an ultra-processed, highly refined diet with a lot of the same. All of this and more culminates in putting your body in a position to not only operate efficiently, but to heal with the best of them. And if you need help getting to where you want to be, or just want a little extra support and guidance, you can join our weekly challenges in Patreon, where we as a group implement longevity-focused change, habit by habit, slowly and sustainably getting healthier together from the inside out. So if you're interested in joining the Longevity Squad, the links will be in the description below. Remember, just like feeling good, refreshed, restored, rejuvenated each and every day doesn't just happen, wound healing doesn't just, I guess it kind of does. However, the speed and efficiency of recovering is something that you and your lifestyle have control over, and something that you need to put yourself in a position to be equipped to handle. For example, say you were mountain biking and I'm just kidding. We're done with the battle wound stories. I got no more. Unless you want to hear about the time I